Hello and welcome to my Siege of Orgrimmar raid guide. My name is Aliena, and in this video I'll show you all you need to know about the Shah of Pride, the 4th boss in this new raid instance. We completed this fight with 2 tanks, 6 healers and 17 DPS, but similar raid configurations may work just as well. Shah of Pride is a 2-phase encounter with an emphasis on raid coordination and resource management. Positioning for this fight should be as the image shows, with the tank facing the Shah away from the raid and the raid stacked between 2 of the prisons on the ground. Your raid will be stacked up for the majority of the encounter, so healers should choose their talents accordingly. The resource you deal with in this encounter is Pride. All players start at 0 Pride, but getting hit with the Shah's abilities will increase your Pride. The goal for every raid member is to keep their Pride as low as possible at all times due to an ability called Swelling Pride. This is used approximately every minute or whenever the Shah reaches 100 energy and will inflict heavy AoE damage as well as give everyone another 5 Pride. In addition, Swelling Pride will have different effects for players that have Pride above 25, 50, 75 or at 100. Ideally, no one should hit 25 Pride until after Phase 2 starts at 30% health. Between 25 and 49 Pride, Swelling Pride will put a Void Zone at their feet that will explode for heavy AoE damage and inflict more Pride. Between 50 and 74 Pride, Swelling Pride will spawn a Void Zone about 15 yards behind the player. This Void Zone is only visible to the affected player and must be stood in to avoid heavy rate-wide AoE damage. Between 75 and 99 Pride, Swelling Pride will turn a player into a bomb for 25 seconds that will damage and inflict more Pride on anyone within 5 yards. At 100 Pride, Swelling Pride will mind control a player for the rest of the encounter. The tank swap mechanic here is called Wounded Pride. The Shah will periodically use this on the current tank. After he's wounded, the Shah will inflict 5 Pride with every melee attack, so your other tank must taunt as soon as possible once your first tank is wounded. There are several reasons why it's ideal for your raid to stay stacked up. First, Norushan will occasionally bless random players with Gift of the Titans. This buff makes the affected players immune to Pride gain, and on top of that, if all players with Gift of the Titans are within 8 yards of each other, they all gain a buff called Power of the Titans, which increases haste and all damage and healing done by 15%. Maximizing Power of the Titans will make killing Shah of Pride much easier. Secondly, once a minute, Shah will summon up to 5 adds on random players. Having them all grouped up from the get-go makes it much easier to AoE them down. However, it's very important that your entire raid moves out of the stacking spot as soon as the adds appear, as they will do an explosion after 2 seconds that damages anyone within 2 yards and gives them 5 Pride. Once the adds have done their initial explosion, everyone can move back into the stack spot. These adds can and should be stunned. Every 20 seconds, the Shah will mark 5 players, or 2 in the 10-man version, with Mark of Arrogance. This inflicts damage every second for the rest of the encounter, or until dispelled. However, dispelling this will inflict 5 Pride on the dispeller, so it should only be done by healers that are under the effects of Gift of the Titans, which inhibits their Pride gain. In 10 men, 1 healer will always get the buff, and in 25 men, 2 healers will always get the buff. If necessary, call this out on Vent, as the debuffs can get bothersome if you have too many up at once. Next, let's talk a bit about the 4 prisons that you see on the ground. Roughly every minute, the Shah will imprison 4 random raid members, or 2 in the 10-man version. Imprison deals damage and inflicts Pride over time, and to break them out, you have to send raid members to stand on a lit-up patches on the ground. In the 25-man version, you will need 3 players per prison to break someone out, making it 12 people in total, and in the 10-man version, you will need 2 per prison, or 4 total. We assigned our DPS to break out people in the further away prisons, while healers and a few less mobile DPS took care of the closer prisons. Warlock portals help reduce the runtime here. As soon as every player is broken out of their prison, the raid should return to the usual stack spot. Occasionally, the Shah will summon a large add, or 2 in the 25-man version, called Manifestation of Pride. These should be picked up by the off-tank and can be stunned. They will cast Mocking Blast, which inflicts Pride on a random player, and they'll also inflict some Pride on the closest 2 players upon their death. Whenever these are up, they have DPS priority. All of these abilities repeat on the timer until the Shah hits 30% health. At that point, he kills Norushan immediately, which means there will be no more Gift of the Titans buff. Additionally, until the end of the encounter, the Shah will inflict 250k rate-wide damage and 5 rate-wide Pride every 10 seconds. This will almost certainly tip your raid over the 25 Pride threshold, which means that you need to be moving out of the stack spot for every Swelling Pride cast that he does. If anyone has 50 Pride or higher, they need to watch for the individual abilities I outlined earlier in the guide. The Shah will still use all his other abilities below 30%, so moving for the adds and breaking people out of the prisons must still be executed correctly. Bloodlust should be saved for this phase to avoid high Pride accumulation. Those are all the tips that I have for the Sha of Pride. Thank you for watching this guide, I hope it was helpful. I stream most of our raids and other gaming content over at Twitch. I'll put the link in the description box, so come stop by sometime.